Do not use Dairyland oil. It will ruin it. Hey guys, it's Brian with Retired at 40. Today we're going to cover something that just keeps coming up in all of the groups and many of the YouTube comments. We're going to teach you everything you ever wanted to know about oil and maybe some things that you didn't want to know depending on which oil you purchased. We're going to tell you what kind of oil works best in which pump. I'm going to show you how to get the best deal on the oil that we do want to use, and I'm also going to show you a couple things that will help you filter your oil and get the most mileage out of your oil. And then I'm going to give you my number one choice for Harvestright freeze dryer vacuum pump oil coming up. Oil is arguably the most important part to your freeze dryer because that's what keeps your pump running smooth, running for a long time. And really your pump is what's going to take the most wear and tear out of your whole freeze drying system. So just like anything that has a motor that requires oil to keep it cool, keep it lubricated, and keep the pressure happening in your Harvestright, choosing the right oil can be crucial for the longevity of your pump. The oil you choose for your vacuum pump, it serves three purposes. Number one, it's going to keep the machine lubricated. That's the most obvious one. It's going to keep things running smooth. Number two, it keeps the pump running cool, and it acts as a cooling agent for your pump. And the third thing, in a vacuum pump, it actually provides a seal because the oil will make it so air cannot penetrate through the oil, and it will provide a seal on all of your fixtures. So if you look closely, you'll see an empty space here where the third option of pump for a Harvestright would be, and that would be the JB Industries pump. So if you look closely, you'll see a couple missing things. You are not going to see the JB Industries pump, which was the early on in production was one of the options of pumps. And then you'll also not see Dairyland Oil in my selection here of oils. So before the Premier pump came along, before this version of the standard pump came along, there was a version of pump made by JB Industries called the Eliminator, and the Eliminator was a workhorse, but it was loud and it had a lot of common problems that many people had with it. It served its purpose at the time, but Harvestright stepped up, they made a better pump, and then they also made the Premier pump as an option for oiled pumps. Now let's talk about why there's no Dairyland oil in my selection of oils. So these are my choices of oils I would recommend for any of the oiled pumps, but you won't see the Dairyland here, and I want to mention the Dairyland because the Dairyland kind of originally became a topic with the JB pumps and when the JB pumps were being used when there weren't any other options. So like I said earlier, the JB pump was a real workhorse, but it did not do something that these two pumps can do, and that would be separating water from the oil. All of the versions of the Premier pump have a ballast. Some versions of the standard pump have a ballast. The ballast function is to separate the water from the oil, and it does that through water vapor. And the reason why the Premier pump is able to do 20 to 25 to 50 cycles without having an oil change, and this new standard pump is able to do 4 or 5 without an oil change, is because of that ballast. The old JB pump was not able to separate that water. There was no type of ballast system. It made the JB pump just carry all kinds of extra water in the oil, all kinds of extra crud, and it would rust the insides. It would just do all kinds of nasty stuff to that pump. So Dairyland oil is actually meant for the vacuum pumps for milking cows, but someone discovered that you could use them for the vacuum pumps for freeze drying, and it would actually clean the internals because it has detergents and other things that kind of clean out the inside of the vacuum pump. So the Dairyland oil was a great choice for the JB Industries pumps, but not always the best choice for these two pumps. But we're going to come back to that. We're going to talk about our other oil first. So when you buy your Harvestright freeze dryer, they always send you some amount of oil with the pump. And if you're buying the standard pump, this came with my standard pump, and then this came with my premium pump. There are 3 types of oil that are hands down the best oils for a freeze dryer, in my opinion. And I always encourage you to do your own research. I don't know everything. This is what I have had the best experience with. Number 1 is going to be the JB Black Gold. And before I found out about Dairyland, this was my go-to It always was a really good oil. It was made by the company that made the JB pump, so I figured that's got to be the best option for that. For the second option, all I have is a recycled version. I'll put a picture of what it really looks like right here, and that would be Navac oil. Navac is one of the leaders in the vacuum pump industry. In fact, they are the ones that make this premier pump for Harvestright. It's a wonderful brand. They're very high quality, but they're very proud of their oil. It's really, really expensive in my opinion. And a lot of times I don't have a problem paying extra for something that I know is good quality. But in this case, I really just don't think that it's the best choice. Next, let's talk about my number one Harvestright freeze dryer vacuum pump oil choice. And that would be Robinair Premium High Vacuum Pump Oil. I really, really like this stuff. I almost always use this in my premium pump. To me, it always seems to filter the best. It's the best bang for your buck because it's the best value you can get. Okay, let's talk about what the best options are for each pump. For the JB Industries pump, go ahead and use Dairyland. You can use it 100% of the time if you really want to. My best suggestion would be use the JB Black Gold, the Robinairs, the Navac, or whatever type of oil you're normally using in your JB. And then maybe every 2 to 3 or maybe even 5 cycles, switch over and run a batch with Dairyland. It'll help clean all of that junk out of that pump and keep it running sharp. For the standard pump, I would recommend almost the same. You can use the Robinair, you can use the JB Industries, and then, you know, every once in a while, just run a batch of Dairyland through it. It'll just kind of clean out the internals of this. This pump does a much better job than the old JB did of keeping the gunk out of the oil, keeping the water out of the oil. But I still like just using a standard type oil in this pump, and then every once in a while just cycle through some Dairyland. A lot of people in the past have mentioned that the Dairyland oil actually gives kind of an off flavor to their freeze-dried food, which is a little bit concerning to me as well. As soon as I heard kind of that repeating a few times, I immediately stopped using the Dairyland oil. And I would imagine that is due to the detergents and the other things that are in the oil that actually help clean out the pump. Last, let's talk about what kind of oil we can put in this Premier pump, because to me this is the most important part of this video. Do not use Dairyland oil in the Premier pump. It will ruin it. This pump is designed to separate water out away from the oil. And Dairyland oil has a really bad tendency of trapping water inside the oil, which means this pump cannot do what it's meant to do. This pump needs a good quality oil. This pump is made by Navac, so running Navac oil is obviously a good choice. The JB Black Gold is fine in this pump, as well as the Robinair. I run almost exclusively Robinair oil in this pump. I've never had a lick of problems. I love this pump. You know that if you've been watching this channel for a while. In fact, I love this pump so much because it's got this little sight window in here, and it says to change the oil when the oil looks dirty through the sight glass. I've never seen it happen. This pump is so efficient at separating the oil and cleaning the oil and keeping it clean that I just change it because I'm scared that I'm going to do something wrong, but I don't think this pump would have a problem. You could probably go more than 25 batches because this oil, it always looks crystal clear. It's pretty crazy. So the best deal I found on the Robinair is in a 12 pack. It's 12 individual quarts and it's $76. It's free shipping. That means it's $6.36 per quart. That's pretty tough to beat. It's a good quality oil. That's my favorite. The JB Black Gold, you can get a quart of it for $12.18, which is quite a bit more than the Robinair was. It's almost twice as much, but you can get 1 gallon for $37.98. The Navac oil, which I suspect comes with the premium that Harvestright sends, they put their label on it. It's about $53 per gallon, which is pretty spendy. So in my opinion, probably not worth the extra cost because you can get 2 gallons of Robinair for the same price as the Navac. Last, I want to touch on something that's almost as important as choosing the right oil, and that's being able to get the most mileage out of the oil that you do have. And if you're filtering the oil, you do have a few options. You have the Harvey style filter that Harvestright sends with you. You have a Brita style pitcher that will filter the oil. Put a link right here so you can see the video of how this was made, how we made it from home. I'll also put a link on where you can pick up a filter just like this. And then last you have something that's a little bit more complex. This was made by a fellow freeze dryer, and he actually is selling them on his site now. I'll put a link to the description down below. And then I've also seen people use these laboratory water separators, and there are plenty of threads on how to make those on the Facebook group and the MeWe group. So don't forget to join those. It's just Retired at 40's freeze drying group. And as always, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell to get notifications of new videos that come out. Every Sunday at 8 a.m. we're gonna have a new video that comes out. Take a second to give me a thumbs up if you found the video helpful. Drop by the store, freezedryingsupplies.com. We're kind of a one-stop shop for freeze drying supplies. We're gonna have lots of new products coming out in the next couple months. And last, if you're thinking about purchasing a freeze dryer, please consider using our affiliate link. And I think that's it for today, guys. I really hope this helped clear up some confusion. I know I've had a lot of people ask what type of oil should I be using. A lot of people say Dairyland, but they're not always right. So with that said, this is Retired at 40. Remember to live life simple, and we'll catch you next week.